Good evening, I'm Nima Rajan, and this is Forum Daily for Monday, May 2nd. We start the cast in Ukraine, where President Volodymyr Zelensky is hoping more people will be able to leave Mariupol in an organized evacuation today. City Council has told residents wanting to leave to gather at a shopping mall. This even though buses to take them out of the city hadn't reached the gathering point. As in the past, when official evacuations faltered, some people managed to escape under their own steam, but others have no way out. More than 100 civilians evacuated from the plant are expected to arrive in Zaporizhzhia, about 230 kilometers northwest of Mariupol today. Back here at home, military ombudsman Gregory Lick says the Canadian Armed Forces is failing in a number of ways when it comes to accommodating members with special family needs. Armed Forces members are required to regularly relocate, but anyone with a disabled child or older parents who need support can apply for a compassionate posting to stay where they are or move to a certain place. Mr. Lick's report says there is no clear criteria for who can qualify for a compassionate posting and other issues. In Kingston, Ontario, remembrances are pouring in for the 4 officer cadets who died when their vehicle plunged into the waters off Canada's Royal Military College campus. One of the young men, Andre Honchu, is being remembered for his humor, with a high school friend noting that he was an outgoing athlete, a class clown who liked to make people laugh, and often talked proudly of all the hard work he was putting in at the college. National Defence says an investigation is ongoing. Archbishop of Canterbury Justin Welby says Canada's residential school system was a cultural genocide. During his visit to Saskatchewan's James Smith Cree Nation on Sunday, the head of the Anglican Church said he could understand why many survivors feel it was an actual genocide. This was after he listened to emotional residential school survivors share their stories. Reverend Welby apologized that the church allowed terrible crime to happen at the schools. Moving to Manitoba now, where a mandatory evacuation order has been issued for the Peguis First Nation, which is about 150 kilometers north of Winnipeg. Ice jams on the Fisher River are driving up water levels and threatening to flood the community. Floodwaters are covering some rural roads in southern Manitoba, forcing some people to leave their homes before they lose access to the road. In the nation's capital, Ottawa police are investigating what they're calling an incident of hate-motivated mischief at a religious institution. Rolling Thunder protesters made good on their plan to leave the capital on Sunday, but not before a service at the Capital City Bikers Church. The day's only formal event was defaced with graffiti targeting demonstrators. Reports say the building was vandalized with spray-painted messages. All right, well, in health-related news, about 65% of 18 to 29-year-old Canadians haven't received a COVID-19 vaccine booster shot. Banin Hassan is one of them, and she says she doesn't believe the virus is as big a risk as it used to be. In Calgary, Dr. Zia Hu doesn't think young people will end up overwhelming hospitals if they get COVID-19. Staff shortages at some major airports across the country are leading to warnings for travelers to arrive extra early to allow for long security screening lines. The Canadian Air Transport Security Authority is experiencing ongoing staffing shortages that are causing long lines and lengthy delays. The Vancouver International Airport Authority says passengers can help by limiting carry-on liquid containers to 100 milliliters and by having all their documents ready. All right, turning to the Conservative Party leadership race, which is moving forward with 6 candidates. The party confirms Pierre Poilievre, Jean Charest, Patrick Brown, Leslyn Lewis, Scott Aitchison, and Roman Baber. They have all submitted the full $300,000 registration fee and a compliance deposit. This along with signatures from 500 party members. The Conservatives will announce their leader on September 10th. Meanwhile, the 12th annual PEI Burger Love competition is featuring a twist this month to support an island industry that's had a tough year. Burger entries will include potato pairings, ranging from fully loaded baked potatoes to poutine to fries or potato salad. Over the last 11 campaigns, PEI Burger Love has sold 1.3 million burgers with sales of more than $18 million. Canadian Jeopardy super champ Mattea Roach stands to hit another milestone if she extends her winning streak in tonight's episode. The 23-year-old tutor would move to number 5 on the list of longest runs on the TV quiz show. She currently is tied for the number 6 spot with 19 consecutive wins. Ms. Roach also has the longest streak of any Canadian to appear on the show. Up next, a deeper look at the Rolling Thunder protesters in Ottawa this weekend. Ottawa police say that as the weekend came to an end, so too did the Rolling Thunder demonstration. Organizers had promised to leave after Sunday's scheduled events, and they were true to their word. But the force did open an investigation after the capital city Bikers Church, where protesters attended a Sunday service, was defaced with graffiti targeting demonstrators. Messages including fascist and no haven for fascism were spray painted on the building. Police are calling it an incident of hate-motivated mischief. Well, joining us now to give us more details on the demonstration that happened in the nation's capital over the weekend is Dr. Joao Veloso, an associate professor at the University of Ottawa's Faculty of Law. He has expertise in the policing of protesters and mass events. Dr. Veloso, thank you again for joining us today.
You're welcome.
Now, we know you conducted extensive on-the-ground research of the Freedom Convoy protests in February. So how did the City of Ottawa handle the Rolling Thunder demonstration in comparison?
The approach is quite different. First, they enforce the legal tools available, notably bylaws. And I think that's something interesting to note, because we didn't see the SSA views of force that we ended up seeing in February, because nothing has been done for 4 weeks before. And the approach they took this time is, well, let's just enforce the legal tools available, notably bylaws. And the main intervention we had in the downtown area were parking tickets.
Can you tell us a little bit more about these steps, Dr. Veloso? What did police and officials do differently this time around?
Well, they were way more prepared in terms of availability of police forces. So they had plenty of partners. But I would say the key difference is that they securized the area in advance compared to the last time, and they were really clear about the right to protest. The right to protest is about individual rights. Individuals do have shorter rights in terms of protest, in terms of movement, not necessarily trucks, any kind of vehicles that need to follow specific regulations. So they send this message first. Well, everybody has the right to protest as individuals, but this doesn't mean that we're going to allow vehicles in certain areas of town. And this does not mean that parking regulation does not apply. If your vehicle is parked in an area that should not be parked, we're going to enforce the existing bylaws, and they did. The city issued 899 tickets.
All right, Doctor. Well, what do we know so far about the message that Rolling Thunder demonstrators were trying to get out?
The message was quite diffuse in the sense that this main idea of getting back the war memorial. Well, the war memorial was always there. You know, the day before, the weeks before, it was clean, available. Like I work nearby, I live nearby. And a couple of times we went there, and people were going there and putting flowers when weather was nice. So they're getting back something that no one really had taken before. And the same thing for mandates. Like mandates, at least in Ontario, where Ottawa is located, were not necessarily in play like for about a month. So obviously there are still some restrictions regarding travel, but like this is something that sometimes not even under the Canadian government control. Like if we cannot enter in a different country because there are regulations from a different country, well, that's it. Such as life. Like we don't have necessarily border control regarding a foreign country.
All right, Dr. Veloso, a quick minute left here, but what about Ottawa's residents? What is their current emotional state or any sentiments they're giving off following 2 protests in the capital?
think everybody is probably adjusting. Lots of people are not happy on how the police handle the situation because they feel that there was a vehicle restriction area and somehow the police escorted the bikers to a certain extent in a restricted area. Others just think that they manage well the situation, and even like stating that, well, we're glad that didn't have many arrests and the kind of scene we had in February. That it's not necessarily what the population wants either. Like the population was complaining most of February just about basic law and order.
All right, Dr. Veloso, we are out of time, but thank you again for joining us today and clarifying things for us on Forum Daily.
You're welcome.
We'll be right back. Today, Monday, May 2nd, marks the start of Mental Health Week in Canada. And this year, the Canadian Mental Health Association is putting the emphasis on empathy. Under the hashtag #GetReal, the National Mental Health Organization is urging Canadians to put themselves in other people's shoes, to understand where they're coming from, and to listen without judgment. While this new research indicates that Canadians may be feeling empathy fatigue, a survey conducted by CMHA and the University of British Columbia indicates only 13% of Canadians are feeling empathetic. This is down from 23% at the start of the pandemic. Well, with us now to discuss Mental Health Week and empathy is Ms. Sarah Kennel, National Director of Public Policy at the CMHA. Ms. Kennel, welcome back to Forum Daily.
Thanks for having me.
So let's start with this, ma'am. How does the CMHA define and measure empathy?
Empathy is really about the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes, to understand where they're coming from, also to kind of remove judgment and bias from the relationship, whether it be interpersonally or at a societal level when you're thinking about the conflict or the divisions that exist within our society. You know, empathy is the ability to see commonality and work through difference.
Sounds like something really important during these times, ma'am. Now, the study indicated that Canadians are feeling less empathetic. So can you unpack the main findings of this research here?
Yeah, absolutely. So the research we conducted was at the end of 2021. So you'll recall, the Omicron variant was rampant throughout the country. We were headed into new lockdowns. And at that moment in time, Canadians were feeling the least empathetic they felt throughout the entire course of the pandemic. So back in the early days of, March, April, May 2020, we saw our empathy levels at, 1 in 4 of us feeling empathetic. And that's when we were all in this together. We were bending over backwards to help each other out, really rallying support for frontline workers. But 2 years into the pandemic, those feelings of empathy have really waned, and we're entering a phase of empathy fatigue.
So for some perspective, why does a decline in empathy matter in the first place?
Yeah, empathy is really key to resolving conflict, building healthy relationships, identifying commonality when differences or conflict exists. So empathy is a skill that can be learned and something that we all should be doing more of in order to, be able to manage conflict in society and live without stress at an interpersonal level. So that's why it's really important for us to be learning and growing this skill.
All right, ma'am. Well, something interesting from this study I noticed was that Canadians are as worried about lost social connections as they are about getting sick with COVID-19. So what message should be taken away from this data here?
Social connection is so important, and isolation, lockdown, the public health measures have really reduced our ability to maintain relationships and connection with family members and community members, whether they're in our communities or live far away. And, what we're really seeing is that it's so important to be able to overcome difference when we're able to connect with each other, to have conversations, to identify what that common ground is. And that's why we need to be really keeping an eye on these data points, because as we're seeing the rises in divisions in our society, differences of opinion around public health measures, et cetera, empathy is the real, I don't want to say silver bullet, but it's certainly an important skill for us to bring to the table as we overcome these challenges.
All right, Ms. Kenna, let's talk solutions. What kind of steps need to be taken to improve the current state of mental health in Canada during this tail end of the pandemic and long after it?
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, we need better access to mental health supports, whether it be counseling or psychotherapy. Many people struggle to find the help that they need in community. So we really want to see more investment, of course. It's also about, recognizing the importance of mental health promotion and social and emotional learning. Kids are able to be empathetic. Babies, we know when, babies hear each other cry, that's the first sign that they have empathy. So these are skills that can be learned and developed over time, which is why investments in mental health promotion at early ages, children and youth, really important and should be part of our education system.
All right, just a quick 30 seconds left here, but how can our viewers get involved with Empathy and Mental Health Week this week?
Yeah, talk about it with your friends and family. Talk about it on social media, #GetReal. Visit your local Canadian Mental Health Association branch or other community-based organizations and look at how you can support and also learn from the resources they have. But really talk about it and get real about your emotions.
Time to get real. All right, Ms. Kennel, thank you again for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
Stay with us. Up next on Forum Daily, we've got more news from around the world, of course. Poland's climate minister calls for immediate sanctions on Russian energy. We'll have that story and more up next. Israel has summoned the Russian ambassador. This comes after Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov made claims about Nazism and anti-Semitism, including claims that Hitler was Jewish. Israel says Mr. Lavrov's remarks blame Jews for their own murder in the Holocaust. In some of the harshest remarks since the start of the war in Ukraine, Israeli Foreign Minister Yair Lapid called Mr. Lavrov's statement, quote, unforgivable and scandalous and a horrible historical error. He says the government of Russia needs to apologize to Israel and to the Jewish people. Meanwhile, Poland's climate and environment minister is calling for immediate sanctions on Russian oil and gas. European Union officials are meeting in Brussels to discuss their next moves. This comes after Russia announced last week that it is cutting off gas supplies to Bulgaria and Poland. Anna Moskva is urging her fellow ministers to unite and impose sweeping sanctions on Russia's oil and natural gas sectors over the war in Ukraine, and not to cave in to pressure to pay for their gas in Russian rubles. Well, there are concerns that Russia's war on Ukraine could spread to a small strip of land in Moldova near the Ukrainian border. The land has been controlled by pro-Moscow separatists. This was since 1992. Latvia's foreign ministry is now strongly urging its citizens against visiting Transnistria and to leave if they are currently there. It is citing regional security threats and Moldova's recent decision to extend the state of emergency throughout the country for 60 days. To start his three-nation tour of West Africa, United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has called on rich countries to increase their investments within Africa. This comes as the continent recovers from the COVID-19 pandemic and is impacted by the war in Ukraine. He said the war is aggravating a triple crisis, food, energy, and financial, for the region and well beyond. Mr. Guterres was speaking Sunday in Senegal before sharing an iftar dinner, the meal breaking the Ramadan fast. It was with President Macky Sall, who became president of the African Union earlier this year. The UN Secretary-General's trip will continue to Niger and Nigeria. In Dubai, food delivery drivers protesting wage cuts and grueling working conditions have gone on an extremely rare strike. The mass walkout started on Saturday, paralyzing one of the country's main delivery apps, and it was reviving concerns about labor conditions in the emirate. The strike ended early Monday when London-based Deliveroo agreed in a letter to riders to restore workers' pay to $2.79 per delivery. This was instead of the proposed rate of $2.38 that had ignited the work stoppage. The Amazon-backed firm also backtracked on its plan to extend working shifts to 14 hours a day. Strikes remain illegal in the United Arab Emirates. The European Union says it believes Apple has abused its dominant position by limiting access to rivals to its mobile payment system, Apple Pay. The EU's executive arm has been investigating the technology company since 2020. The European Commission's preliminary view is that Apple is restricting competition by preventing mobile wallet app developers from accessing the necessary hardware and software on its devices. Well, after working remotely in sweats and yoga pants for 2 years, many North Americans are rethinking their wardrobes to balance comfort and professionalism as offices reopen. They're giving a heave-ho to the pre-pandemic structured suits, zip-front pants, and pencil skirts, and are experimenting with new looks. Retailers and brands are rushing to meet workers' fashion needs for the future of work, with blazers made with knit fabrics, pants with drawstrings or elastic bands, and casual twists on the regular button-down dress shirt. New Zealand has begun welcoming back tourists from Canada, the UK, the US, Japan, and more than 50 other countries for the first time in more than 2 years. Officials lifted most of the country's remaining pandemic border restrictions on Monday. Before the spread of COVID-19, more than 3 million tourists visited each year. This accounts for more than 5% of the economy. Amputee athlete Jackie Hunt-Boersma says her mantra is "I can do hard things," and she isn't just talking the talk. In her case, she is also running the run. She has now done 104 marathons in 104 days. She completed the quest on Saturday near her home in Phoenix, and by doing so, she sets an unofficial world record for the number of consecutive daily marathons. Jackie, who is 46, is a South African native who lost her left leg below the knee to a rare cancer. She uses a carbon fiber prosthesis to run and has raised more than $67,000 to help fellow Blade Runners get similar devices. That'll do it for your look at national and international news for today. Take care, Canada. We'll see you next time.